You are listening to the audio portion of the QB Power Hour webinar series. The QB Power Hour is a free bi-weekly webinar series for accounting professionals presented by Michelle Long and Dan DeLong, who are very passionate about the industry, QuickBooks, and apps that integrate with QuickBooks. You can find out all the details about the webinar series at qbpowerhour.com. So without further ado, here's Michelle and Dan.
Welcome, everybody, to another QB Power Hour. Today's topic is reporting tips in QuickBooks, and we're going to be talking about both desktop and QuickBooks Online. So I'm very glad to have you joining us today. My name is Michelle Long. I'm the owner of Long for Success. I am a speaker, and I've been a trainer for Intuit since 2007. I first started teaching QuickBooks in '99, so I've been doing this for a while, and I absolutely love it. So I'm really glad to have you guys joining us today as we talk about some reporting tips and tricks. But I did want to remind you, if you'll notice there's the updated QBO practice set. If you're new learning QuickBooks Online, go to Amazon and check out the practice set that we have, or some of the other books that I have out there as well. And there you can see the link to our Facebook group for QB Power Hour. We'd love to have you join us out there, as well as the LinkedIn group. Always welcome to join us and continue the discussion in those groups. Dan, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, my name is Dan DeLong. I'm owner of Danwith, former Intuit employee for about 18 years in the technical support area. So proficient in all things Intuit. And I just recently edited the QBO for Dummies 5th edition, which is available on Amazon.
Awesome. Wonderful. All right, and then just as a reminder, details about the QB Power Hour webinars. I know we do have some new people. Welcome. Glad to have you joining us. We do these webinars every other Thursday for the most part. We skip one once in a while due to Thanksgiving or other holidays. Our topics are always on QuickBooks tips. We might be covering what's new in QuickBooks, troubleshooting. Plus, once in a while, we're covering marketing topics, value pricing, third-party apps, and more. But we're always focused on topics that are going to help accounting professionals succeed in your business. As a reminder, there's the links to the PDFs of the slides and the handouts for the whole year. Those will be in there. The recordings will be updated. I'm working on that this afternoon. And then Dan's got a podcast going. If you're busy, and especially if you're commuting and things, and you'd like to listen to us on a podcast, you're now able to do that thanks to Dan's technical genius. So thank you, Dan, for making that happen. I just wanted to remind you all about a few upcoming events. Is the QuickBooks VCon and the Roadshow. If you go to qbtrainingevents.com, we're in our fall roadshow, if you will. We've just been to several different cities doing the intro to QuickBooks. Now upcoming, we're going to be in various cities doing the core certification, the advanced certifications in some cities. Some cities we have a Grow Your Practice workshop where we're helping you learn how to add like app advisory services, how to work on your marketing, working on value pricing, and that's the Grow Your Practice workshop. We also have master classes available. 2-day technical deep dive, like the first day is deep technical stuff on QuickBooks, and then day 2 is all about your practice, and it's helping you create a transformative practice, if you will. So we'd love to have you join us at those. Again, we're going to cities all across the U.S., so check it out. We'd love to have you join us at those, as well as Dan and I both would love to see you at QuickBooks Connect. That's coming up the first part of November 6th through the 8th. It's always an awesome deal, and check out, like Southwest has great prices on flights. You can fly right into San Jose on Southwest or into San Francisco. So we'd love to see you at those conferences as well. And here's just a reminder of when you go to QB Training Events, this is what you see in the red box there. You'll see there's webinars. Intuit's offering webinars every single month. There's in-person training, like I mentioned, the Roadshow. And then there's also a virtual conference. Almost every month, Intuit has a virtual conference. And many, if I won't say all, but many of these, like the Grow Your Practice Masterclass, there's a small fee for those. But the others are all free, and you can get free CPE. So check that stuff out at qbtrainingevents.com. So specifically what Dan and I are talking about today, and I love this, so Michael said that when we said reporting tips, he was thinking we were talking about reporting tips like in a restaurant and reporting tips for waitresses and waiters and things like that. No, we're talking about reports that you create and tips around those reports. So
I could see how
specifically,
that could be confused. Yeah.
I know. I see that now, and I'm like, oops, that doesn't make sense. So what we're going to be talking about, and Dan and I are going to go back and forth talking about desktop as well as QuickBooks Online. So we're going to talk about understanding sources and targets. This is really important for your reports and understanding them and things. We'll share some tips with you on how to control the order of the accounts or sorting your reports, scheduling reports to automatically send with some special tips to help you when you're working with your clients there. We'll talk about adding comments or notes on your reports that you're sharing with clients or that you're using for internal purposes, and then reports from lists and quick reports. So we've got a number of different topics here, and we do have time for some Q&A, so you all will want to type your questions into that question box, and then we'll be getting those as we go along. So first of all, let's talk about understanding the sources and targets. What are these things? Well, just to lay some of the foundation, and then Dan's going to go a little deeper, the source of a transaction, you see the red box on this invoice. The source of the transaction is in the header. That is the header part. You only have one source per transaction, and that source is always your balance sheet account. And when you look at the transaction journal, like if you go look at the journal entry for that transaction, it's always going to be the first line. So your source is the header, and it's balance sheet accounts, and it's the first line on your transaction journal, as opposed to your targets. So we have sources and targets. The target is in the bottom half of the transaction, down there in the lines or the grid section that you have down there. As you can see on this invoice, we have multiple lines. You can have multiple targets within a transaction. So one source account, but you can have multiple targets, and those targets are how the transaction's distributed in the general ledger. What is it posting to? So sources is your header balance sheet information. Targets is like the detailed general ledger information. You can have multiple targets per transaction. So a couple of examples. If you've got an expense transaction, so in QuickBooks Online, we can enter an expense. Your source is either the bank or the credit card account, and then the target is whatever accounts you're posting that to, like whatever expense accounts. With an invoice, your source, your balance sheet account, is your accounts receivable. And then the targets come from those lines of the invoice. With received payment, your source is, again, accounts receivable. But in the received payment, your target is whatever you're depositing it to, like your checking account. Then we have lots of exceptions with journal entries, okay? Because a journal entry doesn't have any sources. The journal entry is all targets. So no sources. You can have a balance sheet account in a journal entry, but it's a target. It's not a source. And so here's an example. When you look at a journal entry, this is that invoice that we had on the screen. So the invoice, the first line there you see is accounts receivable. That's your source line. Now this source information, the date, the transaction type, the number, and the name, those are part of the source, but on those targets, like for the rock fountain, the custom design, and the pump, the source data is also copied to those other ones. So this is showing you the journal entry, and you see the first line is your source. The others are your targets. But then when we go in and look at a report here where we're looking at like all the target detail, like for example, under design income, these are all the target lines. Notice how that source data is included, the date, the transaction type, the number, and the name. So it does pull that source information onto target reports when you're doing that. Okay, so that explains it a little bit to get you introduced to it. Now we're going to let our techie genius, Dan, go into some more detail on some of these and special things there. So go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I think about it, I look back at my career at Intuit, and reports is really what is why we do all the things that we do inside of QuickBooks in general. You put in good data so that you get good reports. And I worked there for about 5 years until somebody told me about what source and target actually was. And when I actually sat down and understood it and really kind of uncovered what source and target actually is, reports just made a whole lot more sense to me, because where the rubber hits the road here is that certain reports are source-based reports, and sometimes people want to see target information on a source-based report, and the report doesn't look like what you would expect it to. So when you really get down to it and understand source and versus target, then it gets a lot more explainable, at least when you're trying to customize a report to get something that you really want to see out of that report. So in desktop, you're going to have the journal entry itself. The top line of the journal entry in QuickBooks Desktop is going to be considered the source, and that plays a lot of havoc when, especially on like cash basis reports inside of QuickBooks Desktop, if you don't have the source be what it expects to see. So on the next slide, if you sometimes there's a workaround inside of QuickBooks Desktop where you leave the top line blank, and that will help QuickBooks with generating some of those reports, because now there's no source and it's all targets. Now when we compare that to QuickBooks Online, some of the requirements, because they're all targets, are okay, because you can have multiple AR or AP accounts on the same transaction, which in desktop is a big no-no. But that's where a lot of those things get kind of pushed aside when you have the journal entry being all targets versus the top line being the source and the subsequent lines being the target. So I think on the next slide we have so what source and targets, why they're important for reporting. So you have some general source reports, the balance sheet and all your AR and AP reports. Those are all source-based reports by default. So when you're filtering or looking for things that are targets in those kinds of reports, then you get data missing or not even there. The worst base scenario is you run a report and it shows nothing. There's data in there, but now you've got nothing on a report, so you really can't tell anything about that. So this is why this is understanding this kind of concept is really important, because when you want to advise your client, you get to be the hero or the goat if you're depending on the report that you're showing them. So understanding that the target reports are going to be your profit and loss. So that's really the big differentiator between, when you think of what is a source report, balance sheet, what is the target report, profit and loss, and then you can kind of go from there as far as which report is which. And then there are some reports that look at both sides, the source and the target, and like the transaction detail reports, where it looks at both, and then you have to then use the filters to filter out the source versus the target based on the accounts that you want to look at. Oh, we can't hear you, Michelle.
Thank you. I muted myself so you didn't hear my typing. A good example of this, and where it can get confusing for people, is some of these construction clients, they're completed contract, and so when they have expenses for the job, it's not going to an expense account, but rather it's going to an asset account for work in progress. And so when they want to see like a job profitability report, typically that's pulling your targets, your income and expense accounts, but we want to filter then and change, like you said, that detail report, change the filter so it's not pulling expense reports, but it would pull all accounts so that you're getting the asset account for the work in process. So that's where sometimes things get a little confusing and you're like, well, how am I going to get this report? And I think that's where kind of understanding sources and targets can help you a little bit. And maybe that's not a good example, but that's one where, I could think of where things came out weird, and you run the report, and like you said here, it'll show no data on the report, but there's data there, and it's because you're getting those wrong a little bit. Does that make sense?
And the the reporting itself is two-dimensional, right? So you're going to either have this this side of the transaction or the other side of the transaction. If you have both sides, then your net of your transaction is zero because you've got your debits and your credits, and all of the accounting just washes itself out. But a lot of times, people want a third dimension where it's payments linked to invoices, that sort of thing, where you're crossing over a source over to a target of another transaction. That then is where QuickBooks kind of is limited, and then you kind of have to look at some advanced reporting or um, some other add-on that would allow you to combine those things together. So that's the way
And
I always explained it to people, is that that you've got two dimensions on a report. If you want a third, then you're kind of pushing the limits of what QuickBooks reporting can do.
right, and we've got some third-party apps to mention towards the very
Hmm.
end. But Dan, this brings up something else, and maybe we should have put some slides in on this. But when you're talking about the sources and those being balance sheet accounts, understanding that although you can run a balance sheet by class, it's not meaningful. But yet, a
Hmm.
balance sheet by location is meaningful. Do you want to explain some of the details on why that is? Why it doesn't work for classes, but it does for locations?
Yeah, so especially in QuickBooks Online, when
Yeah.
you're talking about classes, um, classes are only going to be defined in on targets. So even though you can have a preference inside of QuickBooks Online to say you want to do one class per transaction, the class is only going to be allocated on the target side of the transaction. So the source in this case is never classified, even though the target is. Or you may see that the drop down is at the top of the transaction and go, hey. But then if you actually look at the transaction detail of that transaction, you'll see that class is blank for the source of that transaction. Now, QuickBooks Desktop, the balance sheet by class, will allocate that proportionately on the report, the balance sheet by class, because there is no location. There's no concept of location in QuickBooks Desktop.
Right.
And in online, then you have the location, which kind of takes the place of the classification of the source. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. Well, and for those of you that
Like, I
want
think
more
I confused
information,
myself.
well, but you're exactly right. So where people get confused, let's say I'm entering an invoice and I'm going to assign it to the class of, class A, and because I put it in the source section of the invoice, I think that means, okay, that's working for accounts receivable on the invoice, which is the source, but it's not. It's not applying that. So I think the big takeaway here for people to remember, if you need a balance sheet, you want to use locations. You want to use location tracking with QuickBooks Online, and that's
Mhm.
covered in the online advanced certification training materials, like in Module 1. So if you all want more information on class and location and sources and targets, go to the advanced training materials Module 1, I believe it is, on categorization. So Dan, I got another question for you here then.
Sure.
Okay, so, and this is good to help people kind of think it through. So let's say a customer paid you via credit card, and now we're going to do a refund on the credit card. So can you tell them about the source and the target on that, on a refund on a credit card?
So if you're refunding the credit card itself,
Yes.
yeah. So I mean, if you're just giving the money back, then writing a refund check to accounts receivable to give to refund it back is the easiest way to do that. But now you've got two balance sheet accounts on that transaction. But that's what it's going, and like you had talked before, the um, the target of that check is accounts receivable. So that's just another aspect of all this, is that now the balance sheet is the target. And QuickBooks is understands a lot of that in most cases. Typically where this is going to get confusing is those when you're dealing with balance sheet accounts that really shouldn't flow into a cash basis reports, like accounts receivable.
Right,
If you're
right.
dealing with cash, then there really isn't a need for accounts receivable, and QuickBooks gets very confused with well, you're telling me one thing, but you're showing me another.
Yeah.
So when you're using accrual-based transactions in a cash basis reports, then things get a little kludgy. Like, for
Yes.
example, and one of the other things I wanted to bring up is, accounting practices, GAAP accounting practices say on a journal entry to put the debit first, right? That's what you're taught. Well,
Right.
that debit being first is now going to be the source in QuickBooks Desktop, and that may not be what you want for your reports. So just bearing that in mind, that you've got, if you're doing debits first, and that's now what would consider to be a target, now, and especially on a cash basis, that's going to then play a little havoc. So credit memos, like where you're giving a credit and you put accounts receivable as a target and then apply that credit on a cash basis report, QuickBooks goes, what the heck is that? And then
Yep.
can put your balance sheet out of balance, and that's like false advertising, right? It's like, hey, this is a balance sheet. It can't be
And
out
it
of
doesn't
balance.
balance. So I think the lesson learned, or one of the takeaways to remember in QuickBooks Online, journal entries are always targets. Okay, so in QuickBooks Online, journal entries are always targets. In QuickBooks Desktop, leave the first line of a journal entry blank, then all your lines are targets, and you avoid some unexpected situations with bugs. I'll say there's some bugs with journal entries depending on what's on the first line. So best practice, just leave it blank.
I'm going to go with nuance.
Nuances. There you go. I like that. Okay. And so Jerry had a comment about good idea about using location rather than class for balance sheet breakdown. Now, if only our reclassification tool worked for reclassing locations.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry, you're right. And in some of those situations, that reclass tool, you cannot use it for those transactions. That's where you might want to look at a third-party tool like CData or some of these other ones. And that's some of this content that we cover in our master class. So if you can get to one of those cities with the master class, we would love to have you join us. There's a master class in each area. We've got East Coast, West Coast, North, South kind of covered. So we'd love to have you join us for some of those. And somebody said, never knew that about JEs and desktop. Yeah, these JEs and desktop, with that top line, if it is, wait a minute, Dan, we don't want to leave it blank, because if it is blank and you see that on a report, you can't drill down into it.
Right.
Didn't we say you should have a journal entry clearing account that you used on the top line so it wasn't totally blank to avoid that bug?
That was the follow-up to that is, there was a workaround where you would just put everything, insert a blank line so that your source was empty, but then that had other nuances to it. So put in some kind of clearing account at the top so that you do have a source, and then QuickBooks is much happier with that.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, so hopefully this helped you all on sources and targets. And I know somebody said, hey, this is great, that they'd never really learned that and stuff. So that's why Dan thought it would be very good to share this information with you. So thank you guys, and keep asking those questions. And Dan, we got a couple in there that look kind of hard.
So you're going to leave it to me, huh?
I'm going to leave it to you. Is it possible to run the open bills report with the customer and job column? So an accounts payable report, open bills, with the customer and job column on it.
Yeah, for that you would have to be looking at the target, because what QuickBooks does is it copies the source information to the targets, but it doesn't take the targets to the source. So that's why some of those reports are not going to be what you want. So you'd have to be looking at the target information. So looking at the income and expense side of that, and then that's going to give you detail instead of the summary information. So bearing that in mind, so then you can use things like group and total by, features of those reports, so that you can get the total, or send it to Excel.
Yeah,
and let
Dan,
Excel do it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important what you just said is, let's say you run that report, then under the customization you can group by or total by to get so you get subtotals within all the detail there. And a lot of people don't use that or they forget about
Yeah.
that. So that's a good call out on that.
And then on top of that, you can now collapse a lot of those things so that even if you show all the detail, you can then collapse them all, and then you then ultimately have your summary that you're looking for.
Yes, good. Okay, so let's talk now. Another thing that comes up quite a bit when I'm out training, and I hear people ask this a lot, how do I control the order on my reports? What order these accounts are showing up in? How do I control that order? And so when you're working with QuickBooks Online, you can use account numbers. Or, so if you're using account numbers, you set up the account numbers in the order you want them to appear on your profit and loss or your balance sheet. Or if you've not done that, what you can do is you can collapse the sub accounts like Dan mentioned. See the drop down right here next to income? I could use that to collapse and get rid of all those sub accounts. But in this example, I wanted to show you how, a lot of us, we want to see the highest income number first. So in other words, landscaping services is our biggest dollar amount. A lot of times we want to see it from the largest dollar amount down to the smallest. So in that situation, what you'd want to do is up here, click on sort. So I've collapsed some individual sections here, or you can collapse the whole thing or expand it back. But then when you sort, so I sorted it in descending order so that it goes from largest to smallest. Now, when you do this, it'll put your income accounts in the order that you want them in, but it's going to do that on the expenses as well. So they're going to be from largest to smallest as opposed to alphabetical order. So if you truly want to control your order, you need to use those account numbers with QuickBooks Online. But QuickBooks Desktop's a little easier. Dan, you want to explain that to him?
Yeah, so the way that the accounts are going to show up in QuickBooks Desktop on the reports is based on the way that you sort them inside of the chart of accounts directly. And you have this luxurious little diamond that's going to be next to the name of the account that you can click, drag, move wherever you want on the chart of accounts. And once it's in that order, that's the presented order on those reports. So, it's a double-edged sword because sometimes people sort them and put it in a specific order, and then they run the report and like, why is it out of order? Or the order that I didn't expect, and it's because it's pulling directly from the way things are particularly placed inside the chart of accounts right there. So you can use account numbers as well, and then when you resort the list, it'll go in that order, or you can customize and move things around however you'd like. You muted yourself again.
Thanks, Dan. And I love that ability to just drag and drop the accounts, because then we could put the income in the order we wanted, but yet have the expenses in like an alphabetical order or whatever. And so I do wish QBO could do this dragging and dropping to rearrange your accounts. So that's an area where I think Desktop does have a plus. I do like that. So then the other thing we have is scheduling reports. And I'm just going to go ahead and pop into QuickBooks here and show you this. And let me go into QuickBooks Online here. So when you go into your reports, and you can schedule reports in Desktop as well. Dan's going to talk about that in just a minute. So right now, I'm talking about QuickBooks Online scheduling reports. So let's say I've got a profit and loss. I can customize it. So you have to save the customization in order to put it in a scheduled email. So I don't have to do anything at all. I can just click Save the Customization, Profit and Loss, and I'll just say like 2. You give it a little bit different name. You can add it to a group. Like you might want to have a group name called Monthly for your clients where you're going to send them monthly reports. And then you can also, when you save a customization, you can choose to share this report with everybody that has access to QuickBooks or nobody. And this is why sometimes you've got reports that you want to share with the owner, but you don't want to share them with all the employees. And so this is where you may want to schedule reports to be emailed out to the owner of the company or to a board of directors or to yourself. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But you're going to save your customization. Let me go ahead and save that. Then under reports, we will have some custom reports. right here. Once you've clicked Save Customization, and remember, all I did was change the name a little bit. But once you've got custom reports, that's when we're able to go out there, and you'll see here I could export it, delete it, but I want to edit it. So I want to go edit it so it's not unscheduled. I want to schedule these things so that they can automatically be sent. So I turn on that I want to set the email schedule. What's your frequency? Maybe I want these to go monthly, and I want it to go on the, let's pick a specific day, on the 10th day of the month. Now I want you to notice it doesn't say do this on the 10th day of the month if you got all your work done. If you've reconciled the accounts, if you've made any entries, it's going to do it whatever time frame you specify automatically. So you need to make sure that you're giving yourself enough leeway, that you've reconciled the accounts and all this, and that the reports are ready to go, because they will automatically go. I can vouch for that. So you enter the email information here, and then one of the best things about setting up these reports to email them is you can attach the report as an Excel file. And this is very helpful in a very specific situation. So, and I've got a slide for this, so I'll show you that. I'll talk about that in just a second, but you can attach it as an Excel file if you want. But once you save and close this, whatever reports you put in there, and you can put a number of reports in the group, all right? So you can do this for groups or reports to send a bunch of them. Whatever you put in there, it will automatically create and email that report as specified. And I can tell you, Dan, I don't know if you knew this, I set one up. I was using a 30-day free trial when I was training in London, and I set it up and I used my real email address.
Oh.
And so for a whole year, I kept getting an empty report every month. But they kept emailing me that report just like I scheduled it.
and that brings up a pretty good horror story about QuickBooks Online and scheduled reports. So if you want to go back to, well, you're running a poll.
I'm sorry, I launched a poll while you were talking.
That's all right. I'm okay with that. But so I'm trying to remember the distinct sequence of events. So you put in QuickBooks Online, you put the email address on the schedule to go, right?
Yes, yes.
So that email is recorded on the schedule. Now, if you delete that report, that schedule is still kind of in there, even though you've deleted the report, the schedule is still there. And what can happen sometimes is now you've deleted that. Let's say one of those people should no longer receive that report.
Right.
It'll still send the report, even though they're not even a user in QuickBooks anymore. So before you delete a report, you want to make sure that you delete the schedule first and then delete the report, because when the report's deleted, it's gone. You can't go back in and edit the schedule anymore. So
that's a very good tip, yeah. And that's especially true when people leave the company. Like if you're sending reports to the salespeople and somebody leaves, you want to edit that schedule to remove their email address. Or like if you set it up for a board of directors, and let's say they have a 2-year term, you can specify an end date that this goes through whatever the period is, whatever the ending date is, and then it stops, but that is a very good point. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll question, and I'll just share it with you. 45% of you customize reports all the time. 38% say yes. 10% say no, that their clients haven't asked for any. And so we've got the vast majority of that are customizing reports for their clients. So I think that's awesome, because this is a great way for us to add value for our clients, is by customizing reports for them to help them learn more about their business and have better information. So back to scheduling those reports, one of the things I wanted to share with you, and this is a great tip, I use the Ask My Accountant account. And so what I'll do is I'll go in and customize a year-to-date transaction detail for the Ask My Accountant account. So I want year-to-date, and I want to see all the activity for the year, and I save it and I set it up to email to myself. And so that's helpful, so I can see if my clients have things under Ask My Accountant that we have to deal with and figure out where they should be posted. Another way, though, that we can do this, and I love this idea. I learned it from somebody out on the road show. I don't know who, but they also set up an Ask My Client. because as we're going through the bank feeds and we're going through and we say, I don't know what this transaction was for, and I'm not sure what this was for, we have questions for our client. So they created an Ask My Client account, and they go through and they set the year-to-date transaction detail for that account. They save the customization. They set it up to email to their client, like maybe twice a month, once a week, however often, and they attach that report as an Excel file, because then they have their client go in the Excel file and put in there what it was for. Then the client can share that Excel file back with the accountant, so you've got your questions answered. So I thought that was a great way to use scheduling reports and attaching that as an Excel report or an Excel file, so that they could then add in there the answer on what that transaction was for. Now, Dan, would you like to talk about scheduled reports for desktop?
Sure. And I wanted to add that there's a lot of questions that are coming in about specific detailed reports. Hector Garcia is actually doing a really deep dive in a couple weeks in his webinar series about QBO reports. So that would be great to attend. You probably get a little bit out of that as far as these specific types of things that we're talking about with reports. We're kind of covering the surface, and then Hector's going to take a deeper dive. Now, with regards to scheduling reports in desktop, in 2017, I think was the when this feature came out in desktop. So it can do it, but there's a lot of buts. QuickBooks needs to know what time it is really what it boils down to. So you have to have QuickBooks running. Not more than one company file can be open. For you accountants, if you've got multiple versions of QuickBooks, the same year's versions installed on the same computer, like QuickBooks Enterprise versus QuickBooks Desktop Premier, that can cause some challenges if you're the one doing the sending. Computer needs to be on and not in sleep or hibernation mode. But again, QuickBooks needs to know what time it is, and it gets that time from the computer, not some global clock like QuickBooks Online can do, because everything's up in the cloud, and it can use somebody else's computer to find out what time it is. And then if you're using Outlook to send out the email, Outlook needs to be open. So that may pose a bit of a challenge with actually setting it up to do that. And then there's other conditions like user account control. That's a Windows permissions thing. So it can have a warning, because QuickBooks is without a user or a person actually initiating it, Windows detects that as something's going on, and I need to alert the user about that. So if you have your user account control set to warn you when one computer program is talking to another computer program, which sounds malicious, it's going to warn you, and then it's going to stop the whole process. And then you also need to put a password on these financial documents that are going to be sent out of QuickBooks. So there's a lot of more nuances with regards to scheduling the reports, but it is something that you can do, and a lot of people didn't even realize that you could.
I didn't, so that's a good one. So Dan, let me ask you this question, because I remember when I was working with my clients and I wanted them to keep their computer turned on so that I could log in remotely, they can turn their monitor off.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They don't have to have the monitor on all night, but they have to leave their computer on. And then Donovan had a question. If we use Gmail to send the reports, do we also have to have Gmail open?
Well, that's with the enhanced security that you have with setting up your webmail for both Yahoo and Gmail. As long as you've established that ahead of time, then you don't have to, because then QuickBooks has already been granted permission to Gmail. Obviously, it needs to see the internet, so that's another thing. So another add-on there is if the router goes out or something like that, then that's going to stop it. Now, the good news is that when the reports fail, because there's plenty of opportunity for that to happen in QuickBooks Desktop, you will get a notification about that inside of QuickBooks. And I put the article about setting up and modifying the schedule reports so that you guys can look at that a little bit later, and really kind of take a little deeper dive into that, because Intuit has itemized out all of those all of those nuances about the scheduling inside a desktop, so that you can really get a better understanding of how that feature actually works.
But I would say this is an area where QBO is better than desktop.
Well, yeah, you've got the
there's different things back and forth on them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a win for QuickBooks Online for sure.
But now we got a win coming up for desktop. So now let's talk about adding comments and notes to reports, because this is where sometimes, we want to have comments that we're sending to our clients. Why is this so much? How come this is so low? What's going on here? We might want to add notes to the clients, or tell them, like on small tools, this has been increasing. We need to pay attention to this area. You might have notes and insights that you want to share with your clients about things on the reports. So with QuickBooks Online, when you come over here and you run a report, so you can see I got an example of P&L, you'll notice up in the top you see the collapse, sort, and then add notes. So when you click add notes, you can type in notes to that. What it's going to do, it's going to show them at the very bottom of the profit and loss. And it doesn't necessarily say, I'm referring to bookkeeping services when I'm making this note. It just puts all your notes at the bottom of that report. So you would have to put bookkeeping services dash, why is this up so much? Why is this low? Whatever. So you need to tell them what you're talking about. And again, all of those notes will go at the very bottom of that report when you create it. So there are notes in QuickBooks Online, but they're better in desktop. So Dan, you want to share that with them?
Yeah. So when you comment on reports, this is where you can do that ask your client. When you go and start to comment on the report, which is a button at the top of the report, you can just start commenting. It opens up the report itself, and then each particular line has the ability to add a comment to it. So if you have a question about design income, you can click in there, and then it's going to add the comment specifically for it. And then, further on down, if you have another question about another number, you can certainly add as many as you want on a per line basis. Now, what you can do after that is you can save it. There's now a list of commented reports. It's from the reports dropdown. There's a place that says commented reports, so you can always go back to the reports that you commented on. And then, of course, they can come back in to their file and reply to that comment, so you can see the discussion, right there on the report itself. At that point,
would you like to go ahead and, because this is good information, and you've got some screenshots here, but do you want to go ahead and take control and show us in desktop how that works? And while you're doing that, while you're taking that, I'm going to answer a question here. Would be nice if QB Desktop and QBO software developers spoke to each other. Okay, so this is where, everybody says, well, why can't they be the same? Why can't they work the same way? How come if they do one thing in desktop, they can't apply it to online? They are two totally separate platforms. The code, if you will, is totally separate. That would be like Mac operating system is totally separate from a Windows operating system. They're not the same. They're not written the same. They're not coded the same. They're not the same. So it's not necessarily that the developers aren't talking to one another, but it's two totally different platforms. So you can't just copy and paste from desktop and put it into online, or vice versa. So that's Go ahead,
and also something to consider and think about is that, QBO actually is 20 years old, and think of what the internet was at that point. There was one browser in town, and that was Internet Explorer. Google Chrome was not even a consideration in Silicon Valley at that point in time. But there's a lot of things that were fundamentally created that are still there. Like, for example, FIFO. Once reporting was or the inventory was added, and they started with the whole FIFO calculation, that is, that's something that's pretty difficult to roll back. Because now there's millions of company files that are using that. What impact is that going to have on existing? It's like changing the tires on a moving vehicle. And then, at some points in time, and you can kind of think back of the history of QBO, there were like lines in the sand that were drawn. It's like, okay, we're going to revamp this total thing, but it is, it's like, and I think I've brought up this analogy before. The code is like a ball of rubber bands, and sometimes you have to take back a few rubber bands in order to fix what's broken underneath, and then hopefully you don't break another rubber band in the middle of the ball when you're putting it back together. So it is a pretty big fundamental challenge for a lot of some of these things that, when you look at it, well, why can't it do just like desktop? And that is certainly something that Intuit has already, has always had a when you say that phrase of "but in desktop," that's certainly something that they want to close the gap on, But it's how do you do that while people are using it and not impact, the prior people using it as well. So go ahead.
Yeah. So okay. So go ahead and show the notes. And while you're showing the notes in the comments, somebody asked if you can copy the same notes, copy or include the same notes on more than one statement without retyping.
That's a good question. I'd have to double check on that one. But here in the reports dropdown, you have this commented reports. And this will give a list of everything that was previously saved with comments on it. So you can bring up the report from the list itself. You can edit the commented report or just delete it if you're done with it. And then, of course, display it, print it, or email it to your client. I'm going to have to double check on commenting between reports, but you certainly.
Well, I think you could always just do the plain old copy and paste. I don't know that it saves your comments somewhere where you could pull frequently made comments or something, but you could definitely copy and paste it.
Yeah, so you can copy. You'd have to edit it and then copy it from there and then paste it into your other report.
So we do have a question, because you went straight into commented reports. Can you show them how to start creating comments so they have a commented report?
Yeah, so let's just bring up a balance sheet. And then we have this button up here at the top, comment on report. There's not much on this report to comment on.
Yeah, but they get the idea. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking for the button, not even the detail. But yeah, on the button on the top, comment on report, then that's going to bring up a new window that now that report can be commented on. So then it looks like a box, but it's actually like a comment bubble. So then when you click on that.
Yeah, the thing I love about this is it numbers them too. So next to the line, it'll say 1, and then they can go see the comment for 1 and number. So I love how it's linked to that actual amount on the report to the notes. QBO doesn't do that as well as desktop does right here.
Right, win for desktop.
Yes. I like that. I wish QBO would do that so that you can specifically have it, linked to whatever account you're talking about.
Right, exactly. And then when you're done with that, then you can print it or save it, and then adds what you want to call it, and then now that's added to the commented reports list, which is again from the drop down here at the reports.
And David shared a great example. If you have standard comments, put them into a document so you can copy and paste it into the report. That's a great tip. Very good. And somebody said in QBO regarding the comments, where's the link to add a line to the notes? Dan, can you pop back over to the slides? Because there's a slide that shows you that in QBO.
Let's see. That's going to be another screen over here.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
And so down a couple, down,
this one?
down.
Nope.
Keep going. There, right there. Back up one.
Okay.
Right there. See at the top of the report, you have collapse, sort, and then you have notes. So that's where you click in QuickBooks Online on a report, and it's gonna just put all the notes at the bottom of that profit and loss. In this example, it's a P&L report. So it'll do the whole P&L report, and then it's got like a line going across, and then the notes will be down at the bottom. And you can test that out in like the sample company, Craig's. But that's how you do it in QuickBooks Online. Whereas that's where Dan was showing you, you could do it line by line in QuickBooks Desktop when you're commenting. And then this is a great question from Lorraine. How do your clients then know to review these reports with the comments? Dan?
Oh, well, like, you mean like emailing them?
Well, okay, so you put these comments out there, and now you have these commented reports. How do your clients know to look at that? Well, I assume you're sending them to them.
Yeah. So all the commented reports in Desktop can be emailed. You can email the commented reports to them, or they can come back into the commented reports themselves and answer directly as comments.
But that's if you're sharing a desktop file somehow.
Right.
Like if you're on Right Networks, or if you're using something like QBox or something to share the desktop file.
Right.
Otherwise,
if you're actually in their file.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you're working in a copy and you're sending that, then that's where the comments are going to come in when you email them to them.
Right. So they can go and look right at commented reports and see which ones you had comments on. And then Patricia wants to know, can you get the notes to print out?
The notes are we talking QBO or?
On both. Well, like with QuickBooks Online, when you print the report, the notes are at the bottom. Same thing with your notes and comments with Desktop. Those show at the bottom of the report as well when you print it. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
But you also have the little number next to it in Desktop reports.
I've got too many things up in front of my QuickBooks at the moment. But
I'm going to go ahead and launch another poll question real quick while you're figuring that out. Do you guys use the Ask My Accountant account for your clients or something similar? And again, this is very handy when your clients are, let's say they're the ones that are trying to add and match and deal with the bank feed, and they have questions for you like, I bought a truck, I'm not sure where to post it. And that's where I would tell them, so that you can keep going and get done with your work and do all the transactions for the day, go ahead and post it to an Ask My Accountant account. Whenever you don't know what to do with it, put it there. And that way I know where to go and look for it. But I don't like to log into everybody's company in QuickBooks Online and run the report to see if there's anything out there. So that's where I send myself the year-to-date detail of the Ask My Accountant account so that I can monitor that without logging in and running all those. And Deborah says she uses Uncat Expenses as Ask My Clients, and she has clients use Ask My Accountant to ask me. And then Joanne says, I use Ask My Client with Excel attachment. It works like a charm. That's great. Thank you, guys. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And 55% of you said definitely you use the Ask My Accountant. 22% said sometimes, and 19% said no, that you do not use that.
And then, so what I did was I went to go print the report to answer the question. So here I have it up on the screen as the print preview. So this would be what actually would be printed if we were sending it to them. It does have the notation of the 1 and the 2, wherever you did comment. And then on the subsequent page at the bottom, the actual comments are printed out as well.
Thank you. Okay, Dan, do we want to go on, and can you go ahead and go to the next slides, and let's talk about the lists and quick reports?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so yeah, you go ahead, your desktop, sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, in customizing columns on lists, so any lists that you have in QuickBooks Desktop, you have this option to customize any columns that are there. So if you right click, either if you're in the customer center, the vendor center, or any list itself, you can right click on any of the column headers, like in this case, name, and then you'll have an option to customize the columns, and that's going to bring up another window that will allow you to insert any particular available column. You can add it to the chosen column side and then move it up or down so that you can then see it how you want. And then when you're on the centers, you can just hit print, and then that will print that customer center as the way those columns happen to be. Now, you of course can go into the customer list report or the contact list report and filter your columns as well, or display the columns that you want there. But this is an easy way to do it just right from any particular list, really. So back in QuickBooks Online.
Very good. Yeah, go ahead. You can keep talking.
Okay, so in QuickBooks Online, it works a little bit different. You have another gear in the upper right of the list that you're looking at, and that will give you the available columns to show. And once those columns are shown, then you can click the PDF button or print it from there, and then it will print that report right from there. Now with desktop, one thing that we have is you can run quick reports directly in those any list. So if you're on the item list and you want to choose a particular item, you can select that item and then choose a quick report, and then it will give you just the transactions that dealt with that particular item, which is very helpful when you're trying to see, well, when was this actually used? The thing about QuickBook or quick reports rather is a lot of them don't total. So you're just going to get a detail of everything that's in there, but you may not get the actual total of those reports. So that report. So then you got to send it to Excel if you actually want to total up that report, or go to another report and filter specifically for that item that does total.
And one of the nice things that I might just add is when you're in your customer list, you can click on the columns and choose which columns you want to be included, let's say like emails or attachments, so that then you can see a report that you might want to send to your client. Says, hey, you send the report to Excel, and then you might say, okay, these are the clients that we're missing email addresses from, or these are the vendors that were missing their 1099 ID, their tax ID number for 1099. So, the thing I wanted to make sure people knew is that when you're in the customer center, the vendor center, or whatever, and you're looking at this list, you can customize the columns on that and use that for a report as well, to see things and stuff like that. Not all the reports are going to be in the report center. You can get reports on some of the lists and within the centers and things.
Yeah. Great thing about QuickBooks is it's very flexible. The bad thing about QuickBooks is it's very flexible.
That's true. That is true. All right. And then there's one more slide there on the quick reports, like let's say on an account or a product or service item. Because I know in QuickBooks Desktop, didn't I right click on it and then you could say quick report? And it would give you the detail of that account or that item. And so in QuickBooks Online, you have to go into that list, either the product or services list or the chart of accounts. And over on the right, you click on that drop down, and that's where you can find Run Report, which is the equivalent of that quick report like we used to do in desktop.
Right. Or everybody loves keyboard shortcuts in desktop. Control Q will run the quick report.
Which, by the way, we do have keyboard shortcuts in QuickBooks Online. I don't think there's one for the quick report, but there are keyboard shortcuts. If you Google Long for Success keyboard shortcuts, you'll find a blog post with all of those on there. Dan, I'm still amazed how many people don't know the date shortcuts. Like T for today, Y for the beginning of the year, R end of the year. All of those are in that blog post. So go check that out, Long for Success keyboard shortcuts. And so one of the things, too, Dan, that I want to make sure we share with people is, Dan and I, like he said, we're giving you some of the basics and some of the intro type of tips and stuff, and Hector's going to be doing more advanced reporting coming up soon. But then also we wanted to let you know, sometimes you have clients that just want to go way beyond, like Dan mentioned, the two-dimensional aspect of reporting, and they want to get additional. Like, let's say you've got a client that has, all these different, let's say it's a franchise, and they have 50 different locations, and some of them are using desktop, some are using online, some might be using another, accounting system. Something like Cavinci will allow you to consolidate all of those, desktop and online, and others, consolidate them into one. And like with Covinci, you can actually run a report that says, I want to compare sales for restaurants with a drive-through, sales for restaurants without a drive-through. You can really get in slicing and dicing and getting into lots of details with something like Covinci. And also the new Fathom, I guess it's not that new, but Fathom is now included with your QBO Advanced subscription. Fathom allows you to track and monitor key performance indicators and just do some great reporting and charts and things that are just amazing what you can do with them. So there's a lot of different reporting apps that are available out there. One of the questions I did have for you all is, would you like to learn more about Covinci, which again allows you to consolidate as well as tracking KPIs, and you have a whole dashboard for monitoring your clients. Would you like to learn more about Covinci and other reporting apps? Is this something that you'd like to see us do in the future? And then somebody says, can we get access to Fathom as a QB Pro Advisor accountant, or only if our client has an advanced subscription? So that's a great question, Donna. Fathom is included with QBO Advanced. So it's included in the price of your advanced subscription. However, if you've got QBO Plus that you're using for a client or you're using for yourself, Fathom is a third-party app that you can add on to it. So it's an additional subscription price for the Fathom app. So you can add Fathom to these different versions of QuickBooks Online. It's just included in your subscription with the advanced versus paying for it in addition to your QBO subscription with other ones. So I hope that works. And somebody says I have a typo on Covinci on the slide. I apologize. I am so sorry. And so hopefully that helped.
Yeah, the firm books inside of your QuickBooks Online accountant, even though it says QBOA, it's actually QBO Plus. It's not QBO. The A doesn't stand for advanced in that case.
Yes, and that's a good point. You know, Your Books is your QBO Plus subscription that you use for your firm. So, and I just point out, when you run reports, you know, obviously you're running it on your own company, but when you're in QBOA and you type in the search box up at the top, it's searching your books. So just to help clarify that too. So somebody said, for QB Enterprise users, memorized reports can be organized by user. Think memorized group. That way we can offer reports tuned for specific users or teams. Well, that is a great tip. Yeah, thank you, Steve. That's a good tip. I will just put a little dot to share it with everybody. And this is great. Somebody says, I'm starting my first advanced client next week. What training should I go to first? That depends. So you say advanced client. Do you mean they're using QBO Advanced? If you're not certified yet, you should do the core certification. Then there's the advanced certification. Then we have master classes, which is great. Dan, if you just want to go, do I have an upcoming event slide, I think?
I think so, yes.
Right. Yeah, there you go. So where do I start? This is kind of your order. If you're brand new to QuickBooks Online, start with the intro. And that's available online. Remember, at QB Training Events, there's online webinars every month, or you can do things self-paced training for free. It's free to join the Pro Advisor program, so hopefully you guys have done that. But do the intro first, then do your core certification, advanced certification, and then consider joining us for some of these more advanced classes and workshops as well.
And a small call out about the word advanced.
Yes, please.
So there's advanced certification, but is not advanced QuickBooks. So the advanced certification is QuickBooks advanced topics, not the concepts of what's in QuickBooks Online Advanced. So
very good clarification.
Chicken before the egg. The advanced certification came first, and then QuickBooks Online Advanced came after to just confuse everybody.
Well, and it's just like, you know, with QuickBooks Desktop, you know, Enterprise was just like the other Pro and Premier versions, just with more bells and whistles. And that's the way it is with QBO Advanced. It's just got more bells and whistles and more user permissions, more list capabilities. It's just more robust than QBO Plus. It's the same basic engine, same basic, just with more features and more functionality and more capabilities there. So hopefully that helped. Lynn says there aren't very many trainings listed on the website. So when you go to that website and you click on live events, go in and look like core certification and then look for which city you're at, or vice versa. Click your city to see what's near you. You got to click and drill down. It doesn't just list them all out in one big long list. So you got to click and drill into some of that. And I'm going to go ahead and save that last poll question. Very good, Dan. Over 97% learned something new today. And then Joanne said, I'd love to attend a masterclass, but I don't see them listed in the events. I thought they were by invitation only. I don't think they are, Joanne. I know some of the advanced pro advisors get discounts on them and things. But if you're really, really interested, send me an email and I'll have somebody get in touch with you. And somebody says, great review of reporting and reminded me of tools I haven't used in a while. Oh. That's what we were hoping. That's what we were hoping. And then anything else, Dan, that you'd like to say or add?
No, I just, again, reports is where you bring value. Getting a good report and being able to then dissect those tea leaves and interpret what they actually mean to your client. And then they may look at their own report as well, but creating those reports and giving them good data back, that's the feedback marker, so that they can make informed business decisions based off of that. That's what reports are all about.
And that is a very good point, Dan. That's what it's all about, and that's our adding value for our clients and helping our clients understand what's in the report. So I think that's a very good comment to end on, Dan. So thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us for another QB Power Hour. We'll see you in the Facebook group and hope to see you back in 2 weeks when we'll be doing another live QB Power Hour. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to the QB Power Hour podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in our Facebook group. You can find those resources and much more at qbpowerhour.com.